Good day, dear listener, and welcome to the Breakfast Show on Coal City 929 FM, Radio Nigeria, Enugu, the program where we shed light on critical social issues that affect lives and livelihoods in our society. Today, we address a silent struggle, a painful reality that too often goes unnoticed: widow stigmatization in Nigeria. Across many communities, widows are not only grieving the loss of their spouses, but also facing rejection, humiliation, and harmful traditional practices that rob them of their dignity and rights. Our topic today is titled Breaking the Silence, Ending Widow Stigmatization. And joining us is a woman whose passion and service are giving hope to many. Pastor Kate Izuorah, founder of Kayvicray, Hope of the Hopeless Widows Foundation, and member of Women Support Women Community Network, WOSCONET. Pastor Kate, you are most welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with the big picture. Widowhood is a deeply emotional and social experience, but for many Nigerian women, it becomes a period of suffering and stigmatization. Pastor Kate, from your work with widows through your foundation, how serious is the problem of widow stigmatization in Nigeria today?
I must say that first and foremost, to analyze these problems, we have to understand widow stigmatization. And when we are talking about widow stigmatization in Nigeria, it is deeply rooted in cultural and traditional practices that view widows as a symbol of bad luck, very painful, or even as responsible for their husband's deaths, very common. This misconception honestly leads to various forms of discrimination, including inhumane treatment to widows. Widows are subjected to physical and emotional abuse. Widows are often ostracized by their communities, leading to social isolation and loneliness. And these are the reasons that most times you see a widow trying to commit suicide or even commit suicide because of the trauma they face through. The effects of widow stigmatization are far-reaching, devastating stage. Trust me, widows in Nigeria face poverty and economic hardship. Lack of access to economic resources and inheritance rights pushes widows into poverty. A whole lot of them are suffering, are facing the same pain everywhere. Then, when they face through these things, widows are more likely to experience more mental and psychological health due to trauma, stress, and lack of access to health care. In this pursuit to help widows, we've seen it all, seriously. Widows often lose their social status and identity after their husband's death, leading to a loss of purpose and self-worth. Then when a widow herself looks at herself as if she's worth nothing because of the trauma that she's facing everywhere she goes, then you can imagine how other people look at them. They see them as nothing. They see them as worthless. They see them as bad luck. They see widows as burdens. Very painful, honestly. Then when we want to address widow stigmatization, we have to raise awareness everywhere we go, educate communities about the plight of widows, and make them to understand the need to break down cultural barriers.
And what are some of the most common forms this stigmatization takes, perhaps in terms of traditional rights, property denial, or social exclusion?
Well, I must say that widow stigmatization in Nigeria is a complex issue that manifests in various forms and often rooted in cultural and traditional practices. There are some common forms of stigmatization in Nigeria, which are traditional rights and practices. And when we're talking about traditional rights and practices, we're talking about forced shaving of the hairs. Widows are often forced to shave their hairs as a sign of mourning which can be a traumatic experience, honestly. Because I've never seen where they even tell the men to shave off their hairs for the women, for their wives that they lost. Then are we talking about the confinement? Oftentimes, widows may be confined to their homes for a period, sometimes up to several months, even a year, restricting their freedom and social interaction. Just tell me what will become of that woman, of that widow, when she's all alone, confined in a place without going anywhere. These are the reasons they pass through a lot of, emotional trauma. Then apart from confining them in a place, the stigmatization they face with the dress code that they are being meted to wear. Widows are often required to wear a specific clothing or colors, which is most times black or white, such as, to signify their widowhood, which is very, very wrong, and which can be stigmatizing and isolating, making them feel so emotionally down. Then we are the most, in fact, I don't know what to say, but seems to be the worst aspect of the whole widowhood, ritual cleansing. In some cultures, widows are subjected to ritual cleansing, which can involve humiliating and inhuman practices, such as telling a widow to drink the water used to bath the corpse of the husband. What can be more traumatic than that? Then we talk about the property denial, disinheritance. Widows most times are denied their rightful inheritance, including property, land, and other assets, leaving them financially vulnerable. Even sometimes, in some cases, they tend to collect the children from the widow. God, very dehumanizing. And they also face what we call social exclusion. Widows are most times ostracized by their communities, leading to social isolation and loneliness. And this oftentimes leads them to committing suicide. Honestly, widows really do pass through a lot of things, a lot of trauma, a lot of stress, a lot of agony.
Many of these practices are set to the cultural traditions, but at what point do culture and custom begin to harm rather than protect? And how can we begin to change those mindsets that see widows as unclean or to blame for their husband's death?
Honestly, I must say that while cultural practices and traditions are essential to communities' identity and heritage, they can as well perpetuate harm and injustice, particularly on vulnerable groups like widows. And when culture and custom becomes harmful, then it becomes human rights violation. When I say human rights violation, I mean when cultural practices infringe on fundamental human rights, such as the right to life, dignity, and equality. So it is very, very essential to reevaluate and challenge these customs because they are oftentimes very harmful, especially to widows. Then we talk about the discrimination and marginalization. Cultural practices that discriminate against specific groups like widows and perpetrate their marginalization can have devastating consequences. That is why we see widows emotionally traumatized, and at the end of the day, some of them end up committing suicide, some of them end up being vulnerable. Men will be using them here and there anyhow because of these things. Then we have what we call lack of empathy and understanding. When cultural practices are based on misconceptions, superstitions, or even lack of understanding, they can lead to harm and injustice. And a lot of widows are passing through this. Then when we want to change the mindsets and challenges that all these traditions cause, which are harmful to widows and vulnerable groups. We have to really educate and create awareness. And by so doing, by raising awareness about harm caused by these practices and promoting education, can really help to change the mindsets and challenges of traditional beliefs.
Now, behind every statistic is a human story, a woman, a mother, a sister. Could you share real-life stories that touched you deeply in your work with widows?
Wow. Well, let me start with the story of Amma. Well, Amma is a 35-year-old widow. She lost her husband in a very, very tragic accident, and she was left with 3 young children, 2 boys and a girl. And when she lost her husband, there was no financial support of any sort from anyone, not even from her own immediate family, not to talk of from her husband's family. At that point, she felt that her life has come to an end, that the whole world has collapsed on her. She was emotionally downcasted for some time. But when she looked at her children, they became her source of strength. She now faced it. She had to talk to herself that she has to come back to her feet again. Because despite that grief and trauma, and after looking at her children, Amma was determined to provide for her children. She started struggling. She started doing all sorts of things except to steal and to prostitute. And to the glory of God, she came across our foundation. And when she came across us, we were so unhappy. We felt so bad by what Amma has passed through. And with the help of our organization, Amma received vocational trainings, skill acquisition trainings. And with that and a little financial support she got from us, she was able to start up a small business. And today, as I speak, Amma is a successful entrepreneur, supporting her children and other widows in her community. Then I have Mabel's story. I used to call it Mabel's struggle because she really struggled. And Mabel was a 50-year-old widow, and she was forced to undergo a lot of inhumane traditional practices after the death of her husband. Not only did they confine Mabel to her home, they also shaved her hair and forced her to wear tattered clothing. Mabel passed through a whole lot of trauma, emotional trauma, that at some point, because she could not get any help from anybody. And the worst part was the dehumanization she got from her own immediate family. There was no name they did not call Mabel. There was no torture they did not give to her. In fact, they called her bad luck. They called her all manner of names. They called her burden, especially when she goes to them for help. But Mabel kept on being resilient. But at some point, Mabel couldn't bear. Mabel exiled herself for like 2-3 years. And by the grace of God, she came across our organization, Kayvicray, Hope for the Hopeless Widows Foundations. And through our skills acquisition trainings again and economic empowerment, Mabel was back on her feet again. She had to go back to fight for what belonged to her. She took back her children with the help of our legal practitioners. Mabel got back her kids from her husband's people. Even her own immediate family that were castigating her saw Mabel back on her feet, a different Mabel altogether.
And how do these experiences affect the children of widows and the wider family structure?
Well, of course, the real-life experiences of the widows after the demise of their husbands really do have a profound impact on their children and the wider family structure, such as emotional trauma. The children of the widows oftentimes experience emotional trauma, including grief and anxiety and depression due to the loss of their father and the changed family dynamics. The structure has changed. Everything has changed. Things are no longer the way they used to be. So it causes emotional trauma to the children oftentimes. Then the instability and uncertainty of things around the widow and the children often leads to the widow's struggle to provide stability and security for their children. And this leads to uncertainty and insecurity of their children. They start feeling so insecure, uncertain of what will, happen next. The fear of the unknown will start, creeping in their minds. And this can really cause a lot of, emotional trauma to them. And again, we have what we call reversal of roles. Now, children will start, taking up the responsibilities of the adults, forgetting the fact, the parents, as in the mother, will forget the fact that they are now kids, they're still kids, but they don't have any choice than to leave some of the responsibilities, of an adult to their kids. You see the kids taking care of their younger ones. At that tender age, they become an adult. They start managing the household chores. And this most times affects have a serious negative impact on their childhood and development. Honestly, they will be denied of their childhood. And it can also lead to limited access to their education and opportunities. When widows lose their husbands, oftentimes, they struggle to afford education and other opportunities for their children. And this potentially leads to limiting their future prospects. Then oftentimes, there is always a change in the family dynamics due to the absence of a parent, especially the breadwinner. And this potentially affects the way the family members interact with each other and their roles within the family. You see a brother and sister, they won't be in good times anymore because of all these things. You see children and their mother not in good times because they feel that they have failed, or maybe the mother has failed them because of the loss of their father. Wow. Then there is what we call a long-term consequences of all these things. And all these long-term consequences can be intergenerational poverty, mental health, social and economic exclusion, breaking down, and so on and so forth. Then for us to break this cycle, we have to have what we call a support system. We have to have what we call education and economic opportunities. And we have to have community engagement at all times. Then policy and legislative changes can really help protect the rights of widows and their families.
Well, if you're joining us on Breakfast Show, Coal City 929 FM, Radio Nigeria, Enugu, we are talking about ending widow stigmatization with guest Pastor Kate Izuorah, founder Kayvicray, Hope of the Hopeless Widows Foundation, and member Women Support Women Community Network, WOSCONET. Now, Pastor Kate, you have been leading initiatives through Kayvicray, Hope of the Hopeless Widows Foundation. Tell us, what kind of support do widows need? And in your opinion, what more can the government and society do to support widows economically and legally?
Well, of course, our foundation has provided empowerment programs which offers skill acquisition trainings, economic development initiatives, and of course financial support to help widows rebuild their lives with dignity and independence. We have also provided access to quality education and skills development programs for widows and their children by equipping them with the tools needed to succeed, because they really have to succeed. We also provided them with emotional support and counseling services to help them cope with the grief and navigate life transitions. It's not that easy to be a widow. I am one, and I know how it feels to be one. So widows actually, need that emotional support by counseling them always. If not, they will be more than vulnerable. Trust me. Then we also provided advocacy for widows. We advocate against gender-based violence and promote peace in the lives of widows. We work tirelessly to create a more supportive and inclusive environment for the widows. Honestly, because a lot of them, as one way or another, pass through all these, gender-based violence issues. We provide widows with, legal aid services to ensure that they have access to justice and protection under the law. Because for the fact that people see them as vulnerable, they're prone to, injustice. So we have proper legal aid teams. So these are the people that we are working with, and of course, NAPTIP. So they are one of our stakeholders, that we work with to make sure that widows do have justice at all times. So we work tirelessly to make sure that we involve government and society to take some of these steps in supporting widows. And one of these steps is creating job opportunities for widows. We want the government to help in providing job opportunities for widows, especially through skill acquisition trainings. And this will actually help them to have job securities. So we also advocate for the rights of widows over the properties of their husbands, so that they will not be exploited or denied of their, inheritance rights. Most times we see widows crying, that they're being denied of their inheritance, which is wrong, even when they know that they have children, that they're supposed to cater for. So we also provide them for property rights as well through our legal aids. And then we also provide them, policy reforms for them. And these policy reforms are being implemented, to support widows' economic and social well-being, such as providing them tax exemptions or subsidies for businesses owned by widows. At least this will help them to get, enough gain, or rather interest, from their businesses. So we try to do all these things, and I thank God we are succeeding in them. And by working together with our collaborators, our partners, and of course the society at large, I believe that we can honestly create a more supportive and inclusive environment for widows and enable them to rebuild their lives and thrive.
Indeed, this issue is not just about widows, it's about our collective humanity. If you were to speak directly to community members listening right now, traditional rulers, religious leaders, and even young people, what would your message be?
I would like to say that the plight of widows is a reflection of our collective humanity. It's not supposed to be just for one person or one organization to fight. It's supposed to be, our collective humanity. It's essential that we recognize the value and dignity of every human being, regardless of their marital status. Honestly, then a call to action. Traditional rulers, as custodians of culture and tradition, honestly, you have a unique opportunity to shape social norms and values. Therefore, we urge you to please use your positions to promote the rights and dignity of widows and to work towards eliminating harmful practices that perpetuate their suffering. Let us always remember that a pain for one widow is a pain to other widows. We also implore the religious leaders, that is our spiritual guides. We want them to understand also that they have a critical role to play in promoting empathy, compassion, and understanding. Therefore, we encourage you to use your pulpits to raise awareness about the challenges faced by widows and to promote a culture of support and inclusivity. If they can do this, what more are we asking for? And to the young people out there, as the future leaders of our communities, have a vital role also to play in shaping a more just and equitable society. Therefore, we urge you to be advocates for widows' rights, to challenge harmful stereotypes and biases, and to work towards creating a world where every person can live with dignity and respect. Do not say it does not concern you, because tomorrow is pregnant and we don't know what it will give birth to. It could be you tomorrow. It could be your daughter. It could be your son. It could be anybody. Therefore, you also, the young people, have a very vital role to play so that widows can live with dignity and respect. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
All right. Thank you so much, Pastor Kate Izuorah, founder Kayvicray Hope of the Hopeless Widows Foundation and member Women Support Women Community Network, WOSCONET. Thank you so much for your insight, courage, and compassion in standing up for widows and challenging society to do better. As we have heard today, widowhood is not a curse. It is a phase of life that deserves empathy, not humiliation. Let's remember, when we uplift widows, we strengthen families and communities. Until next time, this is reminding you to speak out, stand up, and break the silence. Okay, that's it on Breakfast Show, Coal City 929 FM, Radio Nigeria, Enugu. Producers, Jude Obu and Anayo Egere. Supervisor, Lady Kate Nebo. Executive producer has been Dr. Ikechukwu Eze, Zonal Director, Radio Nigeria, Enugu National Station. I have been your presenter, Ngozi Ebu.